Good afternoon. I hope you've all received the question paper set for today, the revision questions for today. So we've given, if you observe, we've given 10 questions from each chapter. So these are solutions for today. Then I will send you questions to revise for tomorrow. And similarly, we will send you a solution video for tomorrow also. So we start with excretory system. You can sit with the questions. The first question that we have asked in excretory system is, why is the cortex appearing dotted and the medulla appearing striped? So when you have renal cortex for the kidney basically. So when you have renal cortex, remember that the cortex has a dotted appearance. The reason for the dotted appearance is that there is the presence of Malpighian capsule. Apart from the Malpighian capsule, there is the presence of PCT and DCT. Make sure that you write the full form when it comes to the exam. The renal medulla that is there is showing you a striped appearance. The reason for the striped appearance is the presence of Henle's loop and collecting duct. So Henle's loop is present, and apart from Henle's loop, the collecting duct is present. So they can ask you which are the two parts or which part of the nephron is found in the renal medulla. So that will be Henle's loop. And why is the cortex appearing dotted? Because it has the Malpighian capsule, the PCT and DCT. Remember to write the full form. The second one is the diagram of a Malpighian capsule. So when you're drawing the diagram of a Malpighian capsule, make sure you draw the cup-shaped Bowman's capsule properly, and it should look like a cup. Okay, so you draw it as a cup, make sure it looks like a cup. Yeah, something like this. Then you draw your wider afferent arteriole, you draw your narrower efferent arteriole, and you draw your glomerulus, which is present inside this. Remember that the afferent arteriole is wider, the efferent arteriole is narrower. You can draw circles like this and shade them. Okay. This over here is the Bowman's capsule. This over here is the afferent arteriole. This over here is the efferent arteriole. Make sure you give the title of Malpighian capsule. Remembering that the Malpighian capsule is nothing but the Bowman's capsule along with the capillary network which is present. This capillary network is the glomerulus. Okay. So difference in diameter, capillary network. You can draw the capillary network as loop-like structures also. That will also do. No problems with that. The ones that we had done during revision. The third question that we had done from excretory was defining the process of ultrafiltration. So if you look at the process of ultrafiltration, what are the key words in the definition of ultrafiltration? It is the filtration of which part of blood? So it is a filtration of liquid part of blood. So one marking word is liquid part of blood. Okay. Liquid part of blood from where to where then? It is from the glomerulus. So site of ultrafiltration is glomerulus. To where? So it is in the Bowman's capsule. So filtration of liquid part of blood from the glomerulus into the Bowman's capsule under high hydrostatic pressure. So you should have high hydrostatic pressure in that. High hydrostatic pressure. Under high hydrostatic pressure. And this is the reason for this is that the afferent arteriole is wider as compared to the efferent arteriole. Make sure you write full forms. So it becomes filtration of the liquid part of blood from the glomerulus into the Bowman's capsule under high hydrostatic pressure due to the difference in diameter of the wider incoming afferent arteriole and the narrower outgoing efferent arteriole. The fourth one is the diagram for the LS of kidney. So make sure you give your title again, longitudinal section of the kidney or the LS of the kidney. First, you draw the outline of the LS of the kidney. So you draw the LS of the kidney outline. Then you double that line there. Okay. After you double that line, you make sure you draw your finger-shaped structures like this. Take it down from here. Okay, 1 minute, I'll draw it again. Take it down from here. Close this. Make another line like this. Make this part dotted. This is your renal cortex. The inner part, make sure you draw these stripes, make them as lines so they are visible from these parts here. These are the renal pyramids that we are drawing. So this is renal cortex. This is renal medulla. So there are two regions to the kidney, the cortex and the medulla. This is the renal pyramid. The tip of the renal pyramid is called papilla. This is the broad expanded funnel-shaped pelvis leading down to this structure which is called ureter. Make sure you write full forms and give the title. The fourth one says, sorry, this was the fourth one. The first one was, why is the cortex showing a dotted appearance? Because it has the Malpighian capsule, the PCT, the DCT. The medulla showing a striped appearance because it has Hennell's loop and collecting duct. Second one was the diagram of the Malpighian capsule, wherein we saw the Bowman's capsule, glomerulus, a wider afferent arteriole, a narrower efferent arteriole. Third one was defining ultrafiltration, where we saw that it is a filtration of the liquid part of blood from the glomerulus into the Bowman's capsule under high hydrostatic pressure due to the difference in diameter of the wider incoming afferent arteriole and the narrower outgoing efferent arteriole. Then we saw the diagram to draw the LS of kidney, outer dotted cortex, inner striped medulla, broad expanded funnel-shaped portion pelvis, tube or the ureter arising. And then we move ahead to the fifth one. So this is the fifth one. The fifth one, if you see your question list, says the function of ureter and the urethra. So ureter and the urethra, URETHRA. So ureter basically is carrying urine. In fact, both these tubes are carrying urine, just that the ureter is carrying it from the kidney to the urinary bladder, while the urethra is also carrying urine, but you will say from where to where. So from the urinary bladder to outside the body. From the urinary bladder to outside the body. The sixth question that we had given for excretory was the role of ADH. So if you remember, the full form is anti-diuretic hormone, and this ADH or anti-diuretic hormone is being produced from the posterior lobe of the pituitary gland. ADH का काम है urine में water level कम करना. So what does ADH do? ADH increases. What does ADH increase? So it increases the reabsorption of water. Increases the reabsorption of water. You write the full form in exam, from the nephron. So especially it acts on the DCT and the CT, the distal convoluted tubule and the collecting ducted axon. So it increases the reabsorption of water from the nephron, anti-diuretic hormone. Remember, ADH का काम है urine में water level कम करना. अगर ADH कम होगा तो urine में water level ज़्यादा होगा. Then you had the definition of micturition. Something as simple as the act of passing out urine. But we will write the better one, which is the entire sphincter wala function, which was the relaxation. What was it the relaxation of? It was the relaxation of the sphincter muscle. When was this relaxation taking place? It was relaxation of the sphincter muscle that was taking place under an impulse from the brain. So relaxation of the sphincter muscle under an impulse from the brain, allowing the urine to flow. Allowing the urine to flow from the urinary bladder to the outside. It's basically the act of passing out urine. Then we had the eighth question. The eighth question spoke about organic constituents and inorganic constituents that are present in urine. Very commonly asked that question. If you would have done your board questions, you would have seen. They commonly ask you about what is the most common or major organic component of urine. So you should know organic and inorganic components of urine. The organic components of urine you remember as urea and uric acid. Urea and uric acid. Where urea is the major organic component. And the inorganic component of urine, you remember sodium chloride and potassium chloride. So remember NaCl, KCl. But also remember that writing NaCl, KCl will not get you the mark. You have to write sodium chloride and potassium chloride. The ninth question that we had seen in the list was to distinguish gout and kidney stone. So if you're looking at gout and you're looking at kidney stone, both are disorders associated with the excretory system, but both have uric acid in them. That also you can remember. So uric acid is common to both uric acid and uric acid. But here in kidney stone, along with uric acid, okay, in kidney stone, along with uric acid that is present, there is also calcium oxalate. So the major component or the word that you remember for kidney stone would be calcium oxalate. So calcium oxalate ka crystals, they can get deposited anywhere in the urinary system. You can have it in the kidney, the urinary bladder, in the ureter, while uric acid is getting deposited in joint spaces. So your joint spaces is important. And because of this, there is the inflammation of joint spaces. Inflammation is characterized by redness, pain, swelling. So inflammation of the joint spaces due to deposition of uric acid crystals. The 10th one and the last one from the excretory system that we had was what is osmoregulation. So you have the concept of osmoregulation. In terms of normal definition, osmoregulation is simply maintaining the osmotic pressure of blood. Maintaining the osmotic pressure of blood. We've also learned in class that osmoregulation is a small part of a bigger process which is called homeostasis, where homeostasis was maintenance of a constant internal environment. So maintenance of constant internal environment is homeostasis, and maintenance of normal osmotic pressure of blood is osmoregulation, which is one of the functions of kidney. Move on to the second set that we had seen, which was with relation to endocrine system. So in the first question of endocrine system for today, we had done to define tropic hormones. So we should know what tropic hormones are. So you can write these are hormones which are produced by the pituitary glands and by the pituitary gland. And these hormones stimulate other endocrine glands. They stimulate other endocrine glands to produce their respective hormones or to produce their own hormones. So tropic hormones basically are only stimulating another endocrine gland to produce its own hormones, like TSH, thyroid stimulating hormone, is a tropic hormone coming from the anterior pituitary, going to the thyroid and telling the thyroid to produce thyroxine. The second one, so example also if you want, TSH is an example, FSH is an example, all your gonadotropins are example, ACTH is an example, adrenocorticotropic hormone. The second one that we had written for endocrine for today was to distinguish between the function of insulin and glucagon. So remember, one will have increase and the other will have decrease. The increase and decrease is important there. So glucagon will increase the blood glucose level. How will it increase the blood glucose level? So it will break down the glycogen and it will convert that glycogen into glucose. That glycogen is the form in which excess glucose is stored in animals, and it will be added to the bloodstream. Insulin may marking word would be decrease. So what would it decrease? Again, it would decrease the blood glucose level. And how would it decrease the blood glucose level? It will promote the utilization of glucose by the cell. So promoting the utilization of glucose by the cell. Insulin will decrease the blood glucose level. The third question that we had written for today was the function of oxytocin. So we know that oxytocin is a hormone that comes from posterior pituitary. There are two hormones from posterior pituitary. One function we already did in excretory, ADH. Oxytocin coming from the posterior lobe of the pituitary is the birth hormone. So it stimulates contraction of what? It stimulates the contraction of the uterine muscles or the muscles of the uterus. So stimulates the contraction of the uterine muscles when during child delivery or during childbirth. That is one function, stimulating contraction of the uterine muscles during childbirth. The second function is ejection of milk from mammary glands. So it is basically ejection of milk that is coming from the mammary glands. See, production of milk from mammary glands will be prolactin, that is from the anterior pituitary hormone. And ejection of milk, which is release of milk, will be oxytocin. The fourth one is again a very common one, which is DM and DI to distinguish between cause and symptom, where DM is basically your diabetes mellitus and DI is diabetes insipidus. So so remember, both diabetes are due to hyposecretion, less secretion. It's never because of a hypersecretion that we are looking at. So DM is because of hyposecretion of this hormone, which is called as insulin, and DI is because of less secretion of this hormone, which is called as vasopressin. So one is with relation to vasopressin or antidiuretic hormone, and the other is with relation to insulin. Diabetes mellitus mein there is presence of glucose in urine. And diabetes insipidus mein, there is no glucose in urine if you have to distinguish. In normal patients, in normal people also, there's no glucose in urine because glucose is completely reabsorbed as it is essential for the body. So in DI or diabetes insipidus, there is large volume of dilute urine being produced. Large volume of urine being produced, and this is dilute, which means it has more amount of water. The fifth question that we have taken up from endocrine today was to distinguish between cretinism and myxedema on the basis of cause and on the basis of symptom. So cretinism is hypo again, hyposecretion of thyroxine. Always make sure you write it is hypo of thyroxine in children. Remember C with C, cretinism with children. And myxedema is also hyposecretion. So that is hypo, which is less secretion, and that hyposecretion is also of the same hormone, that is thyroxine. But in this case, it is in adults. So it is hypo of thyroxine in adults and hypo of thyroxine in children. Cretinism is characterized by two things. One is dwarfism, which is stunted growth, and along with dwarfism, there is mental retardation, which is taking place. Myxedema is characterized by swelling. And where are we seeing this swelling? This swelling is being seen on the hands. This swelling is being seen on the face. And there is slowing down of metabolism, which is sluggishness basically. There is reduced heart rate, reduced BMR, okay, and increased tendency to gain weight. We can remember these two. The sixth one that we had written for today from endocrine system was the location of the pituitary gland, something as simple as base of the hypothalamus. So this one is basically hanging from the base of the hypothalamus, and it is in the midbrain. So it is hanging in the midbrain from the base of the hypothalamus. Base of the hypothalamus you have to remember, and remember hypothalamus is a part of the forebrain, FORE. Then you have distinguishing between Addison's and Cushing's syndrome, ADD Addison's and CUSHINGS. Addison's and Cushing's. Remember that this is a board question. Hypo and hyperglycemia wala. So Addison's disease is characterized by hypoglycemia, which is reduced blood glucose level. And Cushing's syndrome is characterized by hyperglycemia, which is increased blood glucose level. Okay, so hypo and hyper ke liye I had given you this because this is something that is asked. Eighth one is function of adrenaline. So adrenaline, adrenal ke medulla se adrenaline aata hai. It is the emergency hormone. Adrenal ke medulla se adrenaline aata hai. What does it do? So adrenaline basically helps the body to adapt. What does it help the body to adapt to? It helps the body to adapt to emergency conditions. And how does it help the body adapt to emergency conditions? It can be by fight, which is facing the situation, or flight, which is running away from the situation. So fight or flight. So function of adrenaline was to help the body adapt to emergency conditions by fight or flight. Then it was the function of thyroxine. The ninth question for today from endocrine was the function of thyroxine. So thyroxine has a simple function. Thyroxine maintains basal metabolic rate. To maintain the basal metabolic rate. Maintaining basal metabolic. Metabolic will have a single L to maintain the basal metabolic rate. Make sure you write the full form. Don't write increase, decrease, just write maintain. Then you have cause and symptom of acromegaly. So first you should know what is acromegaly. Acromegaly. So in relation to growth hormone, hyposecretion causes dwarfism, hyper causes gigantism in children, and acromegaly is caused in adults. So acromegaly is caused in adults. It is caused because of hypersecretion of growth hormone. Again, write full form in school exam. Hyper of growth hormone leads to acromegaly in adults. And this acromegaly is characterized by an increase in the size of the bones of the face, in the size of the bones of the hands, in the size of the bones of the feet. Okay, so increase in bones of face, hand, feet, lower jaw. Okay, all this you can put up. That was your 10th question from endocrine. Okay, and that is where we will end this one and continue in the next one.